She wrote a single sentence, a loose line, drawn with effort on the paper, as if each letter were a final breath. He will not let you fall. The paper was folded and left inside a Bible, between two yellowed pages, behind a bookmark with dried flowers. No one knew about it, not the doctors, not the family, only her, only Haley. The next morning, when the room was empty, a nurse found the note but hesitated to throw it away. There was something about that sentence that seemed to weigh more than the paper, as if, even after the departure, someone there was still trying to say something. There was no signature, no date, but whoever read it would know it wasn't just a farewell. It was a promise, one of those that doesn't die with the body, that crosses days, voices, generations, like a breath sent from heaven. And that's how it all began. Haley's brother Lucas would return to the hospital days later, not because he needed to pick something up, but because he felt deep in his chest that a part of the story was still open. The room, now silent, held more than memories. It held a revelation, a forgotten sentence between sacred pages, a seed planted to bloom in other lives. Maybe you came here because of a video, a curious title, a random notification. But what if this story is also for you? What if that same promise is being delivered, right now, to your heart? Comment the name of someone who's facing a battle. Write a word of faith. Leave your like. Subscribe to this channel, because maybe the next sentence written between the pages of your life will be the beginning of a miracle. He didn't know what he was looking for. He just returned to the hospital like someone following a voice that no one else hears. It was early, the hallway still half dark, and the sound of stretcher wheels echoed in spaced intervals. Wing 3B still carried that bittersweet smell of disinfectant. And when Lucas entered the room where Haley had spent her last days, there was no sign of her left. No wrinkled pillow, no coat hanging on the chair. But the Bible was still there. It always stayed on the nightstand. Haley used to leave it open. Now it was closed, with a golden ribbon marking a page. Lucas felt his hands tremble as he opened it. And there it was, the paper, carefully folded, with a single handwritten sentence. It was his sister's handwriting, weak but unmistakable. In blue ink, still slightly visible, she had written, "He will not let you fall." At the bottom, between the verses, the ribbon marked a passage, Psalm 121. Lucas couldn't remember if he had ever read it before, but at that moment, something pushed him to do it. He sat in the chair, took a deep breath, and read, "I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore." Lucas's voice cracked at the end. He looked up at the white ceiling, his eyes already brimming. The pain of her absence was still real, but something in that reading had rearranged what was broken inside. It wasn't relief, not peace yet. It was something deeper, as if Haley was still there, and that sentence was just the beginning of what she wanted to say. And now, it's your turn. If you've made it this far, it's because this promise is also for you. It doesn't matter the diagnosis, the fear, the season you're in. Today, this prayer can be yours. Close your eyes for a few seconds. Breathe. Picture the mountains before you, those that seem impossible to climb, the treatment, the loneliness, the grief, the waiting, the fear of what comes next. Now imagine lifting your eyes, above the exhaustion, beyond the doubts. Someone is there, watching, caring, a God who doesn't slumber, who never abandons, who won't let your foot slip. Repeat with me, in faith, not with your voice, but with your heart. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. He will not let my foot slip. The Lord is my shade at my right hand. He will keep me from all harm. He will watch over my soul. He will watch over my coming and my going, from now and forevermore. Now, think of someone you love, someone who might be going through a hard time, silently. Write that person's name in the comments. Write it as if you're placing their name into God's hands, and write it for yourself too. Because yes, He is also holding you. Haley didn't write a sermon. She didn't leave a long letter. She wrote a single sentence, a line, stitched in faith. and what she started in blue ink now continues in your mouth, your prayer, your hope. But what Lucas didn't know yet was that same phrase had already started to spread. The world feels out of rhythm when someone you love is gone and everything else stays in place. Lucas left the hospital with his sister's Bible under his arm, the folded note still warm from his hands, and a deep silence clinging to his skin. City traffic moved as usual. People rushed by with coffee cups, earbuds in, laughing on the phone, but he felt like he was walking through the world inside thick glass, watching life happen out there, unable to react. At the funeral, memories began to scatter like petals in the wind. Friends shared stories of Haley, how she brought soup to sick neighbors, how she always knew what to say when someone was on the verge of giving up. There was something in the way she listened that made people feel seen, and that was what hurt Lucas most, knowing that now, the one who truly saw others' pain was no longer here. He overheard a woman saying Haley used to write verses on napkins and once handed one to a patient in the waiting room, who silently broke down in tears. Others said she wrote anonymous letters with words of faith, folded inside white envelopes, left between magazines or pillboxes. But Lucas couldn't feel moved by any of it. He felt something between anger and abandonment. He felt betrayed by a God who, by all appearances, stood watching with folded arms. That night, lying in bed, Lucas tried to pray. The room felt bigger, colder. He tried to say God out loud, but the word wouldn't come. His sister's faith had been so real, but his pain felt even bigger. How could she believe until the very end? How does someone write, "He will not let you fall," knowing they're dying? He opened the Bible. To the marked page, he read the psalm in silence, trying to find some hidden line that would explain everything. A verse that would say, "But sometimes he lets you sink." But there was nothing like that. On the contrary, it was a psalm of presence, of watchfulness, of promises that light the darkness like a torch. In the early hours, he got up and opened his sister's closet. Everything was still there. Folded clothes, prayer journals, boxes neatly labeled in her handwriting, letters never delivered, notes to myself, morning prayers. He opened one of those boxes and found what looked like a kind of vigil journal. Each page had a verse, followed by a short response like a personal reflection. In one of them, she had written, Psalm 121, "He will not let my feet slip." Response, "Even when I am weak, he will keep me standing inside." Lucas ran his fingers over the words. He sat there for hours. By sunrise, he decided to return to the hospital. He didn't know exactly what he hoped to find, but something felt unfinished, as if her faith hadn't been fully revealed yet. When he arrived, he found the nurse who had taken care of Haley in her final days, a middle-aged woman named Susan. She recognized him immediately and said Haley had asked for paper and a pen every night. She said she was writing promises for the future, but she knew she wouldn't live to see that future. "Right?" Lucas asked quietly. Susan answered with something he didn't expect. She said she had enough faith to write for days she wouldn't see. Said faith doesn't depend on how much time you have, but where you go with the time you have left. Lucas felt his chest tighten. He asked if there had been any notebook left in the room. Susan said she didn't know, but that sometimes Haley would write on loose pages and tuck them into her Bible or inside envelopes. She promised to check. As he left the hospital, Lucas drove to a park where he used to walk with Haley before her symptoms worsened. He sat on a bench, took out his phone, opened social media, stared at the screen for long minutes. He wanted to write something, but the words felt too big, and he felt too small to speak them. He didn't have faith like hers. He was still hurting, but he had that phrase, that line that seemed to have a life of its own, as if it wasn't just a memory of his sister, but a breath from another dimension, pulsing between his fingers. He took a deep breath, typed slowly, as if walking on thin ice. "He will not let you fall." No caption, no hashtags, no explanation. He posted it, turned off the screen, slipped the phone into his pocket, as if the gesture was far too small for what he was feeling. He wasn't expecting replies, didn't want likes. He just needed that phrase to leave him. When he got home, he told no one, slept poorly, dreamed of childhood Haley as a little girl, sitting at the table, drawing hearts in her notebooks. He woke up still hearing her voice, but he didn't know if it was a memory or longing echoing inside him. When he picked up his phone in the morning, it took a few seconds to process the number of notifications. The post had been shared dozens of times. Comments from strangers saying they read it at the exact moment they were about to give up. A woman wrote, "Today I asked God for a single phrase. I couldn't pray anymore. When I saw this, I cried. It was the answer." A man commented, "I'm sitting in my car with a goodbye letter on the seat. I read this seconds before doing something I can't even say thank you." Lucas read each comment as if they were prayers coming back to life. He still didn't understand everything. It still hurt. But for the first time, he felt that Haley's faith was moving outside the room, beyond the Bible, beyond memory. It was walking through the world, one phrase at a time, and he had no idea that what had just begun would cross far more than the timeline of his grief. Lucas spent the rest of the morning reading each testimony that appeared in the comments, some short, others detailed. People from different cities, all ages, different situations, but all had one thing in common: they had been touched by the same phrase. "He will not let you fall." It was as if that sentence had been written for each of them, as if it knew the cracks in every heart. But what Lucas still didn't understand was, why had Haley chosen that exact phrase? Why that psalm? She was a voracious reader of the Bible, knew hundreds of verses by heart. Why leave that particular passage as her last? Later that same day, Susan, the nurse, called him. She said she had found something at the bottom of a drawer in room 215, an envelope with handwriting. She immediately recognized. The name written in black ink was short and direct: Lucas. Without hesitation, Lucas got in the car and returned to the hospital. It was his third time walking down that hallway in less than a week, but each time felt more symbolic than the last. Susan handed him the envelope, her eyes glassy. She didn't say a word, just gently squeezed his hand and walked away. Sitting in the old armchair in the room, Lucas opened the envelope. Inside, there was a single sheet folded in half. The paper had soft signs of moisture, as if it had been held by trembling hands. "If you're reading this, it means the psalm has reached you. And if it has, it means you're ready." It was Haley's handwriting, unmistakable. "I don't know if you'll believe any of this. Maybe you won't believe anything at all. But I'm writing anyway, because I know that sometimes faith only begins when everything else seems to have ended. And if my voice can't reach you anymore, let this phrase do it." Lucas felt his heart race. The words vibrated in his fingers as if they were still alive. "God showed me this psalm in the middle of the night. I hadn't slept in days. My body hurt, my soul even more. And that's when I opened the Bible and read, 'He will not let your foot slip.' I cried. For the first time, not out of fear, but out of certainty. Not because of the end, but because of the promise." She continued, "Lucas, I knew I wouldn't stay. I felt my body going down the staircase, step by step, but something inside me was climbing, as if each prayer lifted me to a place above what I could see. That's why I wrote, not for me, but for you, because I knew you would stay, and that your pain would be greater than my absence." On the back of the page, a request: spread it, not with a microphone, nor a stage, but with your eyes, with your hands, with the small gestures you know how to do. This phrase is not mine, it's his, and now it's yours. Lucas pressed the paper to his chest and closed his eyes. He cried, for the first time, not out of despair, but out of encounter. He understood. That wasn't a farewell letter, it was a map, ascending, a silent call to something that hadn't even begun yet. Later that same night, Lucas returned to the family home. He went up to Haley's old room. Everything there was just as she had left it: the floral bedspread, the books stacked beside the bed, the picture frames with verses hanging on the walls. One of them, smaller, displayed the full Psalm 121, with a red marker under the phrase, "The Lord will watch over your soul." Behind the door, he found a box with colorful labels: "For hard days," "Promises for me," phrases I haven't said yet. Inside, dozens of small folded papers, each one with a single line. Some were verses, others, personal notes. Some seemed like she was writing to someone specific, others, as if she were writing to the world. One of them said, "If you found this, it's because you still have something to do." Lucas held that paper firmly. He felt small before the greatness of his sister's faith, but he also felt, for the first time, that maybe he could continue from where she left off, not as someone replacing her, but as someone carrying it forward. He began to sort through some of those papers, scanned them, printed them, placed them inside white envelopes, exactly as Haley used to. On the back, he handwrote, He will not let you fall. And the next day, he went out walking, through the streets, through hospitals, through church benches, placing each envelope carefully, almost like a ritual. He still didn't have all the answers, still didn't understand why some promises don't come true the way we expect. But now, something inside him had shifted, and what he didn't yet know was that those envelopes would do more than console. They would transform. The first envelopes were left almost timidly. Lucas walked with hesitant steps, like someone still discovering their role in a mission they weren't sure was truly theirs. One envelope on a park bench, another at the front desk of a medical center, one discreetly left on the counter of the pharmacy where Haley used to get her medicine. No name, no sender, just the phrase in carefully written letters, "He will not let you fall." At first he thought no one would notice, that the papers might be thrown away, swept up with the dust, ignored like any random flyer. But in less than 3 days, the first responses began to emerge, not as social media comments, but as quiet whispers of something greater. An elderly neighbor called his mother. She was crying. She had found the note tucked between 2 magazine issues in the rheumatologist's waiting room. She said she had considered stopping her treatment. She was tired, in chronic pain for years, unable to see any improvement. But when she read the phrase, something broke inside her. She said, "It was as if someone was holding me by the shoulders and saying, 'It's not over.'" 2 days later, Lucas received a private message from a young woman named Brianna, from another city. She said that after a failed suicide attempt, she had returned to the hospital for psychological follow-up. While waiting for her appointment, she looked at the seat next to her and saw a white envelope forgotten between the backrest and the cushion. On it, the phrase, "At that moment I froze. I started crying without knowing why. That morning, I had asked God for a sign. I said, 'If you're still with me, send me a sign that no one else would understand. Just me.' And then I read, 'He will not let you fall.'" Lucas read it with a heart in trance. It wasn't just a coincidence. His sister's words had transcended the walls of room 215. They had defied logic, crossed cities, hearts, and abysses. Soon, the phrase began appearing in places Lucas had never even visited. Someone wrote it on the door of a bus station restroom. Another pinned it to a lamppost on yellow cardboard. In a hospital in Tennessee, a chaplain read the phrase during a visit and decided to post copies along the hallways. Lucas didn't know who was multiplying the notes, but he knew this wasn't about him. It was about what Haley had left lit in the world. It was like a quiet flame that, instead of fading, was silently spreading. A neighborhood church reached out to him. They had found the phrase on one of the envelopes left in the parking lot. The pastor said he decided to preach on Psalm 121 the following Sunday. At the end of the service, a woman stood up and said that this was the exact passage she'd been reciting since losing her son. "I thought no one cared anymore about what I was going through. But today, I understood that God hasn't forgotten my pain." Another message came from a young man named Mason, from Colorado. He said his brother was in a coma after a car accident. The doctors had given up hope. Mason had left an envelope on the bedside table, just on impulse, as a symbolic gesture. The next day, his brother opened his eyes. Upon recovering, he said he had dreamed of someone whispering in his ear during the night, "He will not let you fall." Lucas read all of it, as though witnessing a miracle without knowing where it began or where it might end. There were no spotlights, no videos, just phrases, papers, faith flowing through hands, pews, and voices. And then, the unexpected happened. A woman named Evelyn sent an email. She was a volunteer at a shelter for women victims of abuse. She reported that someone had left an anonymous box at the gate with sealed envelopes containing the phrase. Some of the women here hadn't spoken in weeks, but one of them, after reading the phrase, picked up a pen, wrote her daughter's name in the corner of the envelope, ... and then began to pray out loud. That shattered Lucas inside. He saw his sister in each of those women, in their quiet strength, in the courage to go on without guarantees, in the kind of faith that clings to the last sentence when all others have failed. The phrase was showing up in places he could never have imagined. A girl had it tattooed on her wrist. A street pastor shouted it over a loudspeaker on a cold night. A terminal patient wrote it on a hospital window pane with blood-stained fingers. But amidst all of this, something began to trouble him again. The letter, the one Haley had written to him. There was something in it that Lucas felt he still hadn't fully understood. Perhaps another sentence, another clue. Something yet unrevealed. So he returned to the box in his sister's old room. He sifted through envelopes, notebooks, loose pages, and he found it. A small note folded 4 times, hidden inside a children's book they used to read together as kids. On the note, there was only one sentence: "If this promise goes beyond you, do not stop it." Lucas sat on the floor, with the note between his fingers. He understood what had started as a phrase of comfort was now a chain of restoration, and he had no idea yet just how far this promise would go. Lucas was sitting at the edge of Haley's bed. It had been weeks since she had passed, but the room remained almost untouched. The white floral quilt, the perfume bottles still on the dresser, the faith books arranged by color. Everything seemed suspended, as if time itself respected the grief, as if the space had not yet accepted that she would not return. That Saturday afternoon, something pulled him back to a childhood memory. He opened the second drawer of her desk. That was where she kept her secrets: journals, letters, diaries, and envelopes that seemed never to be opened. Inside, among a stack of papers tied with an old rubber band, was a beige envelope with his name written by hand. Lucas. His heart raced. His hands began to sweat. He took a deep breath and pulled the envelope gently. It wasn't large, nor heavy, but something in that thin layer held more than just words. He knew it. When he opened it, he found 4 perfectly folded pages. The paper held the lightness of time, as if they had been written over long nights, with a serenity almost impossible to understand. It was Haley's handwriting, steady, despite slightly trembling strokes. And the first sentence was a punch to the gut. "If you're still reading, it's because the promise worked." Lucas paused. Let the tears come before continuing. "Lucas. I never wanted you to go through this pain. Never. But I knew that when it came, you'd try to face it alone. That's why I'm writing. Not to teach you anything, but to walk beside you just a little longer." During my final days here, something changed in me. I began to see that the end isn't what it seems. I began to see the invisible it, to feel what can't be explained. It was like God was whispering, "Right, not because you'll stay, but because someone will, and that someone was you." Lucas felt his hands tremble. It was as if she knew exactly what he'd feel at that moment, as if that letter had been written to be read now, not before, not later, right then. On the afternoon he had nearly given up on spreading the notes around the world. I chose Psalm 121 because it found me when no prayer made sense. I was alone, sitting in that cold hospital chair, feeling my body give up. And when I opened the Bible on impulse, it was as if he said, "You're still being held, even when everything seems lost. The phrase you found, 'He will not let you fall,' was the one echoing inside me every day." I whispered it while my hands trembled, while I took injections, while I held back tears so I wouldn't worry you. Lucas read slowly, stopping at each section, swallowing the words with pain and reverence. It wasn't easy to write, but it wasn't a choice either. It was faith. And faith isn't rational. Faith writes letters that won't be answered, leaves notes in empty rooms, plants seeds in unknown hands. Faith goes on even when the voice can no longer speak. So if one day you feel you're not ready, that you can't go on, remember, I also thought I wasn't ready, but he held me, and he will hold you. If one day you go back to the hospital, if you find someone in the same bed where I was, leave another note. If you see someone sitting in a church pew with lost eyes, fold another paper. If you pass someone and don't know what to say, write. The phrase isn't mine, it's his, but now it walks with you. On the last page, a single sentence, centered, no signature, no period. He will not let you fall. Lucas couldn't hold back his tears. He pressed the pages to his chest and stayed there, motionless, as if trying to hear her voice again through the letters, as if those words still carried the scent of her final nights. He stayed in the room for hours, read and reread, then folded each page as if they were sacred relics. He put the envelope back in the box, but he took out the last page, the one with just the phrase. He decided that this would be the first of a new batch of envelopes. This time, they wouldn't be scattered randomly. He would start something bigger, a new phase of the mission. Following Sunday, Lucas organized a small gathering in a city park. He brought 50 envelopes, all handwritten, with variations of the same verse. Each one contained Haley's phrase, accompanied by small letters inspired by her words. 20 people came, then 30, then 80. People who had never heard of Haley, but had already found her promise on benches, in bags, on doors, or at the bottom of drawers. An elderly lady took the small makeshift stage, crying, holding a crumpled envelope. She said, "This phrase stopped me from taking my life. I thought it was just another random paper. Today, I know it was a direct message from God." Lucas listened in silence, with a full heart, because now he knew Haley hadn't just passed. She had left a legacy, and now, the guardian of the promise was him. But what he still didn't know was that in room 215, a new patient had just found another envelope. And once again, everything was about to begin again. Room 215 had been occupied again. Same window facing the inner courtyard. Same dim 5 p.m. light filtering through the blinds, drawing golden stripes across the floor. The new patient's name was Emily. She was 27 years old and had been diagnosed with an aggressive lymphoma. It was her third hospitalization that year. The silence that settled when she closed her eyes was heavier than the physical pain. It was the silence of uncertainty, of waiting, of the exhaustion of fighting internally even when everyone around her smiled externally. That day, Emily had asked to be alone for a while. The doctor had just left. His words still echoed against the walls of her brain. "We're going to try another round, but we need to prepare your body and soul for all possibilities." She nodded, but something inside her collapsed. For the first time, she wondered if it was worth continuing to fight. That's when she noticed the envelope. It was tucked between some books left on the shelf in the room, hidden among hospital brochures and old magazines. It was white, unnamed, with nothing written on the outside. She pulled it out, almost without thinking, like someone momentarily distracted from their pain. When she opened it, the world stopped. In handwritten letters, firm yet delicate, it read, "He will not let you fall." Emily couldn't breathe, not because of the surprise, but because of the weight of the answer. Because that very morning, in a silent whisper, she had asked God to send her a sign. Just one. Nothing extraordinary, just something to say, "It's still worth it." And now, there it was. In the minutes that followed, she read and reread the phrase, holding the paper to her chest. Then she opened the Bible someone had left on the nightstand. It was an old edition, its pages already worn. The bookmark pointed straight to Psalm 1:1. She read it as if the words had been stitched into her soul since birth, as if her spirit had already known each verse long before hearing them. "I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." Emily began to cry in silence. But it wasn't the cry of fear, it was the cry of reunion, like someone coming home after being away for too long. Like someone rediscovering that their heart still beats, even after so many days without hope. Meanwhile, the movement kept growing. Lucas had created a discreet website where anyone could download the templates for the notes and write them by hand. The rule was simple: no names, no credits, no spotlight. Just spread the promise. In a matter of months, the notes had reached hospitals in other states, rehab clinics, nursing homes, schools, churches, shelters. People were sending in photos of envelopes found in parks, mailboxes, and between pages of library books. There was no campaign, no strategy. There was faith. And then, something happened. A nurse named Rachel, who worked at the same hospital where Haley had been admitted, created a sort of secret mural. It was a blank wall at the end of the hallway in Ward 3B, where patients and visitors began leaving handwritten notes of hope on colorful papers. In the center of the mural, she pinned an envelope with the original phrase, "He will not let you fall." No one knew who had written it, but everyone knew what it did. The phrase became a kind of sacred code among the patients. When someone was about to be admitted, the staff would place the envelope under their pillow. It became an unofficial new protocol. No medical file required it, but everyone knew it worked. Lucas was invited to visit the hospital. When he saw the mural, he couldn't hold back his emotion. Rachel explained that no one asked anymore where the phrase came from. It didn't matter. What mattered was what it did. Room 215 had been occupied again. Same window facing the inner courtyard. Same soft 5 p.m. light, casting golden stripes across the floor through the blinds. The new patient's name was Emily. She was 27 and had been diagnosed with an aggressive lymphoma. It was her third hospitalization that year. The silence that settled in when she closed her eyes was heavier than physical pain. It was the silence of uncertainty, of waiting, of the exhaustion of fighting internally while everyone around her smiled externally. That day, Emily had asked to be alone for a while. The doctor had just left. His words still echoed in the walls of her mind. "We'll try another cycle, but we need to prepare your body and soul for all possibilities." She nodded, but inside, something collapsed. For the first time, she wondered if it was still worth trying. Then she noticed the envelope. It was among the books left on the room's shelf, hidden between hospital pamphlets and old magazines. It was white, with no name, nothing written on the outside. She pulled it out, almost without thinking, as if trying to distract herself from the pain. When she opened it, the world stopped. In handwritten letters, with a firm and delicate stroke, it read, "He will not let you fall." Emily couldn't breathe, not from surprise, but from the weight of the answer. Because that morning, in a silent whisper, she had asked God to send her a sign. Just one, nothing extraordinary, just something that would say, "It's still worth it." And there it was. In the following minutes, she read and reread the phrase, holding the paper against her chest. Then she opened the Bible someone had left on the nightstand, an old edition with worn pages. The marker pointed directly to Psalm 1:1. She read it as if the words had been stitched into her soul since birth, as if her spirit already knew every verse before hearing it. "I lift up my eyes to the mountains, where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." Emily began to cry silently, but it wasn't the cry of fear. It was the cry of reunion, like someone returning home after a long absence, like rediscovering that the heart still beats even after so many days without hope. Meanwhile, the chain continued. Lucas had created a simple website where anyone could download templates of the notes and write them by hand. The rule was simple: no names, no credits, no spotlight. Just spread the promise. In a few months, the notes reached hospitals. In other states, rehabilitation clinics, nursing homes, schools, churches, shelters. People sent photos of envelopes found in parks, mailboxes, and inside library books. There was no campaign, no strategy, only faith. And then, something happened. A nurse named Rachel, who worked in the same hospital where Haley had been treated, created a sort of secret mural. It was a blank wall at the end of Corridor 3B, where patients and visitors began leaving hopeful phrases written on colorful papers. In the center of the mural, she placed one envelope with the original phrase, "He will not let you fall." No one knew who wrote it, but everyone knew what it did. The phrase became a kind of sacred code among patients. When someone was about to be admitted, the staff would leave the envelope under the pillow. It was the new, informal protocol. No medical chart required it, but everyone knew it worked. Lucas was invited to visit the hospital. When he saw the mural, he couldn't hold back his emotion. Rachel explained that no one asked anymore where the phrase came from. It didn't matter. What mattered was what it did. "This phrase walks around here like it has a life of its own. Lucas," she said, with a smile, "it enters rooms before the medical staff. It holds cold hands. It holds souls." As he was leaving, Lucas left a new envelope. But this time, he wrote something on the back. For the first time, he added a second phrase. "If you found this promise, it's yours now too." Emily was discharged weeks later, her body still fragile, but her spirit firmer than ever. When she left, she placed an envelope in the room's wardrobe with the same phrase and a small note in the corner. "Thank you, Haley. I will continue." Yes, she had discovered it. Discovered that the phrase wasn't just a coincidence, that the faith written in the most fragile moment of a woman's life had crossed eternity with the lightness of a note. Lucas continued spreading the envelopes, but now something was different. He began receiving letters from strangers who found healing, comfort, direction. Letters that said, "I don't know who you are, but the phrase you left ... saved my life." And he kept them all in a wooden box on Haley's same desk, next to a Bible permanently opened to Psalm 1:1. At the end of each day, Lucas would write a new phrase, folded with care, in blue ink, with the same handwriting as his sister. Then he would walk the streets, unhurried, without a stage, with purpose, because now he knew it wasn't just about a promise. It was about keeping it alive. Every promise has a starting point. It might be a whispered prayer in the dark, a thought no one hears, a handwritten note by someone who knew they wouldn't be here when it was read. For Haley, the promise began in silence, but today It has passed through hundreds of hands, crossed borders, restored hope to those at the edge, and rekindled faith in those who had forgotten how to pray. Lucas still keeps the original page, the very first one, written in blue pen. He laminated it and framed it in the hallway at home, right by the entrance, not to show off, but to remember. Every day, when he leaves, he runs his fingers across the glass and softly repeats, "He will not let you fall." That phrase is no longer just a memory of his sister. It became his spiritual identity, his life's mission, a constant reminder that God is not limited to what we see. He operates where words can't reach and where doctors cannot go. But this promise isn't just his dot, it's yours too. If you made it this far, if you heard this story to the end, don't think it was by chance. Maybe your life looks like Haley's in the hospital, or like Lucas's, trying to understand everything after loss. Maybe you're in Emily's place, waiting for a silent sign, so listen closely. This is your phrase now. If you're struggling, tired, disappointed, trying to stay standing, God is still here and He still guards those on the edge. He still sends nameless notes with precise words at the exact moment when the heart begins to fall. And if you're hearing this now, it means He came for you too. Close your eyes for a moment, breathe, and repeat with me, "Lord, even when my eyes can't see a way out, even when my body is tired, when strength fails and pain is louder than words, remind me of this promise, that you will not let my feet slip, that you will protect me from all harm, that you will guard my soul, that even if everything collapses, your help comes. In Jesus' name, amen." Now, do what Haley did. Take this phrase and write it on a piece of paper, in a comment, on a mirror, on the door of someone who needs healing. Write the name of someone in the comments below, someone who needs to be reminded they're not alone. Share this video with someone you love. Leave a like not for engagement, but as a sign of faith, and subscribe to this channel so the next promise can also find its way to you, because maybe what began with a single phrase written before she passed is now being continued by you and you. What would you write if you knew your words would be read by someone who's about to give up? Think about it and write